Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be covering IELTS academic book. And in the last video I covered the previous passage, reading passage number 1. Today I'll cover reading passage number 2. So let's quickly get started. In between I will also be sharing some tips that may help reach your answer easily and fast with accuracy. So here we have reading passage number 2. Obviously, this passage is going to be a little more difficult than the previous one. So we have to spend our time wisely. So it says Comet missions. Comet missions, something that looks like some astronaut missions that people go on. So this is what we need to know when it comes to skimming the text. If you are a fast reader, then yes, you can read the first paragraph, read the first line and the last line of the preceding paragraphs and the last paragraph completely. Although I see that the paragraphs are pretty long, so we might not want to waste our time reading such long paragraphs. So let's get going and go straight into the questions. Okay, so first of all, what are the question types? The first question type we identify here is this box-like question is a matching feature question. So it says, look at the following facts, match each fact with the spacecraft that is associated with A to E. So this is called a matching features question. Then we've got here notes completion from 19 to 22. So we have got these questions, and the word limit has also been given, no more than 2 words. And finally, we've got complete each sentence with correct endings. So this is matching sentence endings question from 23 to 26. And this is I think the end of the, and we have the next passage. Okay, so let's get started with this one. So how do you do the matching feature question is, you look at these names. You will find these names straight away into your passage. So all you need to do is to read them properly. It's called Sakigake. It's okay if you're not able to pronounce the names, completely fine. All you have to do is to find these names in your passage. So suicide, Gyoto, contour, deep impact. Okay, let's find them. Sakigake. So if you're doing a computer-based test, all you do a little highlight, you do a right click and you highlight. And if it is a paper-based, then pencil is your go-to thing. So the idea is wherever you see this name, you underline it. Okay, then we have Suisai over here as well, Gyoto as well, contour as well. Okay, so no matter how many times the name is appearing, you underline it each time you see it. So I don't know, I might be, do we have Rosetta? I don't think so. No, we don't. So we just not include it. Deep impact is the final word we are looking for. Okay, so this basically is the first exercise for doing matching features, right? Then we come to what are the things that we have to read about. This spacecraft is noted for being reactivated. So reactivated, you'll not find the word reactivated, but you'll have to find its synonym. Then the next one says, an object was fired at a comet. Object was fired. So we don't know what object was that. At a comet by this spacecraft. Okay. This was a particular country's first spacecraft. So definitely important. This mission ended in failure. This spacecraft could not return images. Okay. So you're basically working at nouns and verbs, right? Okay. Okay, and it also says that we can use any letter more than once. you may use any letter more than once. Although we have 5 letters and 5 options, 5 questions, but it is apparent that one of the options, one of the spacecrafts might not appear as the answer. That's how the mathematics would go. Okay, so we start with Saki Gake. Okay, so let's read it from here. The probe Saki Gake, the inaugural Japanese spacecraft. Inaugural. Now, what does the word inaugural tells you? Inaugural means it is the first time ever. So, we see it is the particular country's first aircraft. So, it is definitely Saki Gake and we mark it A. Right? It was inaugural. Okay, and then the next thing it says that it took place to showcase the new vehicle, measurements of the magnetic fields. The next thing it did was it did not carry, so unlike its twins, we say, which was launched 2 months later, Saki Gake did not carry any photographic equipment, okay, and therefore did not produce pictorial data. Did not produce pictorial data is something that I saw in the questions, which is this spacecraft could not return images. So no pictorial data, so no imaging was sent by this spacecraft A. Again A. So at least you have got one, that is you can use any letter more than once. So A is repeated definitely. Although we don't find any significant information about suicide, because all it says about it is here, which was launched months later. But it did carry the photographic equipment. Nothing else apart from that is mentioned about it. So I think suicide is something that will not appear in the answer. Okay. All right. Let's come to the next one. Saki Gake. That's it. It is all only mentioning about how far it went, right? Did not go close to as Kyoto. Okay, so we are done with Saki Gake. Suicide also in a way we are done. Let's come to Kyoto. So we are not reading everything, we are doing some selective reading. So let's talk about this Kyoto. In the same year, ESA's Kyoto was able to make unprecedented observations of a comet during its 7-year mission, and also the first spacecraft to be reactivated. I think we saw it. Reactivated. So very straightforward. So this is going to be C, Kyoto. And what else? Unprecedented observations of a comet. The comet in question, Comet. So we put it in the at hold. Object was fired at, because it doesn't say directly, it was fired at a comet by this spacecraft. Okay, let's talk about contour. Probe was intended with the hope of discovering a third, but its mission was cut short when it failed. So which one failed? It was contour that failed. So that's D, ended in failure. So that will be this. Deep impact. Let's come to deep impact. Okay, the probe's constructor did not give up. Only 3 years later, they launched Deep Impact. What this mission different? It was able to force material off a comet's surface. It was able to force material off a comet's surface by launching an impactor which collided on the comet's surface, creating a crater approximately 150 in diameter. Okay, that means this Deep Impact actually sent out some material to a comet, right? This material was then studied by scientists who wanted to surface. So object was fired by the spacecraft, so it is going to be E. So we have one suicide that is not going to appear, and these are the answers that we've got: C, E, A, D, A. Right? Let's move to the next set of questions, and there we have complete the notes. 19 to 22, and let's take a look. So now we come to, so it's pretty much straightforward. We come to Rosetta now. Into space, most probably it's going to be launched into space. And let's take a look. So whenever you have this kind of question, you have to pick words from the passage. You cannot choose your own words, right? Okay. Rosetta was in 2004. So it says over here, Rosetta was finally launched on 2nd of March 2004. Now how you can come straight to the answer is you see the numbers and the words, right? So launched. So launch is our answer. Let's write it over here. Okay. Okay, then we have 2007, 2008, we don't read it. 2010 is what we read now. And dash fly by. So see the F capitalized. So we might be having a name over here. 2010. 2010. Flybys I can see. But 2010. Okay, now look at this. Images of Staines asteroid in 2008 followed by Lutetia 2 years later. So 2010 is not mentioned, but 2 years later is mentioned. So this is definitely 2010 and this is our answer. Lutetia. So we write it over here. Put into dash hibernation June 2011. Okay. Hibernation. Hibernation is definitely something. Okay, we'll find, and we've found it. So it's over here. Second para, 2011. So it was put into hibernation while in deep space. Okay. Put into deep space. Deep space hibernation. Philae arrives at Comet 67P. Okay, so this is a date we are expecting. Philae. Philae. 2014. 2014. We've got something as November 2014. We have to read over here. Okay. The craft was then reactivated 3 years later. So 3 years later. Again 3 years later. So 3 years later is definitely 2014. Right? As it neared its target before finally entering orbit around 67P in August of that year. So which is that year? That year is 2014. So this is clearly a sign that we have to read, because this is a distractor. A few months later in November, landed on the surface of the comet. Now what we are looking for is 67P also, because the question says arrives at a comet 67P. So finally entering orbit. So the date is going to be August and not November. So let's write August over here. Mission ended September 2016. So this question type over. Let's come to the last one, and that is matching sentence ending. Now, so how we do this is we find these statements in our passage. The exposure of new material on the surface of the comet. Exposure of new material on the surface of the comet. New material. So it says now have a wealth of information about this type of comet, will be analyzing data. Okay, so fresh material increased the comet's brightness and it made made it much bluer and than had previously been observed. Okay, so exposed material we have found, exposed material on the surface of the comet. So let's read the options as well. So what, the new material did not send back any useful data? No, definitely not, because this sending back of the data can be done only by some spacecraft only. Was not a surprise to scientists, lost contact, was a direct. This can be the answer. Does not indicate. This can also be the answer. Is unlikely to have any connection to Earth. This can also be the answer. This can also be the answer. So we have some possible answers as B, D, E and F. Okay. Right. So it was a change in color and brightness of the comet as it neared the sun on its orbit. It became apparent that the outer and older surface of 67P was stripped away by the sheer heat of the sun. Okay, I think it's talking about something to do with the heat of the sun. We read something about it. Was a direct result of the heat from the sun, I think. And it's talking about the brightness and the color. So it is going to be the D1 only. Exposure of the new material was a result of the heat of the sun. Okay, now shortly after landing on 67P, the probe Philae. So what did the probe do? Maybe the probe lost contact. This can be the answer. I'm not sure, because shortly after landing. Now let's see. Scientists were also not aware the shape of 60 is an unusual one. Through its mission, experts were able to determine the shape was becomes a duck. Much of the data collected came from measurements made by Philae. Okay, it's mentioned over here also later. And what does it say? It says on the surface of 67P. Okay, this was collected before Philae malfunctioned and stopped communicating only our. Okay, so it stopped functioning, and this is definitely the answer. So it's C. And discovery of water vapor. Discovery of water vapor, I saw it. Water was discovered. Although this was exciting, scientists ruled out the possibility that water on Earth derived from these. I think ruled out. Was not a surprise to scientists. No. It was exciting. So it was not. It was definitely something interesting that they liked. But they ruled out that this water was derived from, Earth's water was derived from these sources. Okay, so this was due to different chemical compounds found on in the vapor when compared with water on our planet. Okay, is unlikely to have any connection to Earth. So it has ruled out the possibility. Ruled out means it was not the case, right? So it did not have any connection with Earth. So F, detection of a common Earth gas. Okay, we have some more part of the paragraph over here as well. Let's take a look. Okay, so molecular oxygen is definitely a common Earth gas. Discovery of molecular oxygen found in abundance in our planet was probably the biggest revelation of the mission. Okay, so it was initially thought that oxygen had lain dormant under the frozen surface of the comet, but a recent study suggests that it is actually being produced by the comet itself. So although there is no evidence to suggest that life existed on 67, okay, there is, the theory argues oxygen can be produced without some form of life being present. Okay, oxygen can be produced without some form of life being present. So without life also, oxygen can be produced. So this was discovered. So detection of a common gas does not indicate the presence of life elsewhere. It does not indicate, because it can be produced elsewhere as well. So we have E as the right answer. So this is all for this particular passage. I will see you in the next video for the next passage. Bye-bye.